My name is Fred Cook, and I drive school bus.
My name is Leanne Murchie, and I'm a school bus driver for TCAPS. It's been a very wonderful experience.
When I first hired in, one of the previous bus drivers told me that this particular job, driving school bus, is the best job on earth. So I immediately took to it, and I have to agree that this is one of the best jobs that anyone can do.
What prompted me in the very beginning, I have a college degree, and she said, "You're in the safest vehicle in the world on the road." So I thought, well, I'm gonna try. Because I would be on the same time schedule as my own children. And when they were off, I was off. When holidays, I was there. So it was the best of both worlds. TCAPS offers jobs elsewhere within the system.
Between routes, I used to, for 12, 13 years, I did lunch duty over at East Middle School, and now I paint.
They're real good about finding people the hours that they need during the course of the day to make the job great. We have Mesa Insurance. The whole district has it. It's awesome. It's the best health insurance. We offer a 401k. There's a sign-on bonus. It's a win-win situation.
The most important thing, I think, coming to work at TCAPS is you understand that you are a part of a team. It's a part of a collective. It's not just bus drivers and then versus teachers. It's not that. We all are in this thing called education together.
If a person generally likes kids, this is a perfect job.
So I'm talking to kids all day, and that experience is really heartwarming, and I continue to understand what it means to be a part of the community.
You are an educator. You have a chance to touch children's lives every day, and don't think that you don't. You are such an important part of the wheel of education.
A quorum present, I call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. The board would like to welcome the audience and thanks you for attending. Viewers may watch Board of Education meetings and board committee meetings live on TV 190 or online at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. Please rise and join Miss Desua. So I'm sorry Miss Jerva's first grade classroom at Long Lake Elementary in the Pledge of Allegiance.
The class.
All right. We had the review approval portion of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Moving on to public comment. Is there public comment?
I do not have any public comment requests.
Okay. Moving on to the next agenda item, consent. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
All right.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next up, discussion item, bids and services, deferring to Dr. Van Wagner.
Okay, so tonight, our long-awaited first bid to get started on our innovation and manufacturing centers. And so I'll pass it off to Christine Thomas-Hill, our assistant superintendent, to take us through the bid.
All right, so we went out for bid for package one. It was decided by the team that we would try to get a head start on footings and foundation, but we aren't quite yet ready to go out for bid for the whole entire package. So we're doing 2 phases. We've done this before on other projects. So this package includes concrete work, site work, and demo. And from the memo, you can see the summary of the bids that we are recommending we award. They all happen to be the low bid in each category. We put on here lowest responsible bidder just because sometimes low bid isn't necessarily a responsible bid if they have forgotten scope. Then we wouldn't go with low bid per se. So we always put that in there just to remind you that we go for low, responsive, and responsible bid. And in this case, it is all the lowest numbers. So we're looking at a total of the bid category $786 and $10, but we would like to add the 10% contingency as normal. So we're looking to approve the bids as presented for $864,611.
Any questions?
I move.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I move that the Board of Education awards contracts for the TCAP STEM additions and renovations, bid package number 1, to the lowest responsive and responsible bidders as presented, and include a 10% contingency for total construction award for bid package number 1 in the amount of $864,611.
Second.
Any discussion? Can we get a roll from both?
Yes. Trustee Ballinger,
Yes.
Trustee Moonmore,
Yes.
Trustee Byrd, Trustee Humphries,
Yes.
Trustee Newman Bale,
Yes.
Trustee Pack,
Yes.
Trustee Raymond.
Yes. All right, motion carries. That's the only discussion item today, and then so we're on to the study session on pre-bond planning. Turn back to Dr. Van Wagner.
Okay, so tonight we are at the next step in discussing our pre-bond survey information and making sure that we present to you all the data that we have, some updated numbers of based on some things that we've collected and some things that the board gave feedback on. So tonight, again with us, we have Mary Ann Swain, who's going to be our facilitator from Northwest Ed. So we appreciate her time tonight and her facilitation. And so I and Christine have had the chance to sit down with her and go through some of the thoughts we've had and some sequence of things to present to you. And then we'll kind of go from a conversation after that point, after we hear some presentation back on some of those things we wanted to convey and some of the questions you had previously. So I will go ahead and pass it over to her, and we'll get started from there.
Thank you, Dr. Van Wagner. Thank you all for the privilege of supporting your work session. It's my honor and privilege to be back again today. So as you move through your work tonight, just a quick reminder around the working agreements that you developed last time. And so they'll live here in the room as always, and they are stay at a high level and out of the weeds. We're still in the pre-bond planning process, and so recognizing that there'll be some decisions to make in the weeds later, but that's not tonight, and to support you all with that. And data-driven decisions. So much data has been collected from the community, from the experts that you hired, so ensuring that your decisions as you move forward are based on that. And then rely on the expertise of the professionals. Again, you'll hear from those tonight around reports that they're bringing back. You gave some to-do list at the last work session. And so administration is coming back along with the professionals on responses to that to-do list. So you'll have an opportunity to rely on those as you're making decisions then. And then of course, short, respectful, and to the point responses. And that's really to support balanced participation with everybody in the room and to allow the meeting to move forward and get through all of your items that you have tonight to do. And then utilize parking lot. And so you can put anything that you'd like on this piece of paper as a parking lot. And those are items that are really important to the board that you need to do, but that might not connect necessarily to today's work. And so to remind you where you are in the process, last spring you started with some of the facilities and programming assessments and got community input. And then through spring and summer you did some on programming and planning. And then late summer into now you're having these retreats to decide what's next by looking at the facilities reports and the lists that are coming through. And so today you'll have an opportunity to determine what's next. And so if you look here, and I might be in the way, so I'll step back. This is where you were in August 16th. You actually came to some consensus on plans. You created some outcomes that you met that night, and through that then, you had consensus to move forward with Central Grade School and to focus on priority 1 and 2, on what's necessary now and what's necessary within the next 2 years. So given what you've done, and you have all those notes, and those are all available publicly as well, tonight, the proposed outcome for this work would be to gain consensus on priority 3 and performance management and those undefined items. So those are proposed for this period of time to get to those items. And I've taken the liberty of charting those so that we know when the slide moves that those consensus objectives will move with it. So they're here in the room. And this is an opportunity. Is there anything else that the Board of Education feels may need to be part of tonight's outcomes? So how about a fist of 5? 5 being I agree, let's move forward with these. And if that's the case, then we'll move on with the presentation. So fist of 5, that the outcomes for tonight are priority 3 in performance management, that you'll have consensus, and consensus on the undefined items. Again, doesn't mean that they'll all be mapped out with the detail, but that you have consensus to move forward next within your work in this pre-bond planning process. So fist of 5, I know you guys probably say 8. The 5 meaning yes.
That's
Oh,
good, right?
Yeah.
Is that good? Fine.
All right, perfect. Then we'll move forward with that as we go through this evening battle on the work.
Does anybody
just
need
me.
the fist of 5 explained?
Oh,
I now understand. After one example,
Got a
I
0
get it
from the
now.
president.
It wasn't just me; it was president and vice president were both at 0. So.
Yeah, thank you. My mistake, something I use often. So meaning no, and 5, yes, let's go, and anything in between would be a reason for dialogue.
Okay.
So thank you. And I saw all 5s, and with that definition, does that still make sense? Everybody still agree? So when you left August 16th, there was a list of action items for administration to do and in consultation with the experts. And they are these: to evaluate and analyze the possibilities for expanding the school district's 3 main auditoriums, Central High School, Lars Hochstedt, West Senior High, and then provide a summary of the top 10 undefined categories, and to discuss the information requested about the multi-purpose facilities. In a moment, Ms. Christine Thomas Hill will move through and present all of these. And it's important to know that you have these updated summaries at your desk as well. So you have those to look through as she moves forward. So this is what sort of the work that was intended for her to do in between now, for you guys then to move through this evening, to understand, digest, dialogue about, and then with that information, get to the outcomes that you've agreed upon. So any clarifications, what clarifications may be needed as you move forward then, as we get ready to hear the reports based on the information you requested?
Thanks.
You're
And just as a reminder, the updated summary, you'd asked me to come back with an updated summary that excluded Oak Park and administration, so that's what that is, and you have a copy on your table. So review of auditoriums, we did take a look and do a feasibility study for increased seating at Central High School, Lars, and West Senior High. The ask, I believe, was to try to get up to 1,200 seats, and that in and of itself was a struggle. So we took a stab at 1,000 square feet, or 1,000 seats, sorry. So I will let Gabe go through the analysis of each building and come to kind of a conclusion as it relates to the feasibility.
Okay, so we're gonna start with Central High School. The graph to the right, don't get caught up in that too much, but we included this just so you can see some of the design principles that we use to kind of evaluate each of these spaces. So this could be applied to all three sites. But we're looking for the right proportions of the space, sight lines to be able to see the stage and how far the seating is from the stage itself as you're trying to expand that seating capacity. At Central High School, you currently have 496 seats. To go to 1,000 seats would require a seating area of approximately 15,000 square feet. So it's significantly bigger than what you have today. If you imagine that you're going from roughly 500 seats to 1,000 seats, it's double that space. That makes sense to everybody. So at Central, if you were able to reuse the existing auditorium and just add on an addition for that space, you would need an addition of at least 6,800 square feet to that existing building to provide that space. Unfortunately, due to the orientation at Central High School, there is an existing mechanical mezzanine that is at the back of the seating area on kind of the north side of that space. The only place we really could go without moving the stage is back. You'd have to relocate all of that mechanical equipment and that mechanical mezzanine that serves that whole wing of the building, and just to make room for that seating. So it's a pretty big modification. It would require demolishing that, and then in addition to that, other support spaces, the ability to, again, flare the seating so that you can provide those correct angles to the stage area. All of that work would then end up dictating that you'd need to do modifications like removing the roof, modifying the existing structural system. You would also, sorry, I can't read from here in front of me. Essentially, the result of that is that you would need to completely gut the existing auditorium seating. That's the result of what happens. To be able to move columns, to be able to move that mechanical mezzanine, you need to get it out of the way to then go back in and rebuild it. So it basically is effectively reconstructing the auditorium.
And nothing on the parking. There was no way to address the parking at this.
We were really focused on the space itself.
This is
So,
Central High School.
At Central High School, we didn't.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We didn't evaluate the parking.
Okay.
And just a clarifying question, so that mechanical space is at the stage side or the hall side?
Hall side. So the
Seating
lobby.
side,
yeah,
okay.
The lobby where you walk in right now, it's above that space.
Above that space,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Just to accommodate 1,000 seats, you're saying that would have to be renovated, all of that. And then
Yep.
the 1,200 is obviously not, that's not even feasible at all, right?
it complicates it
Yeah,
even more.
yeah.
And Gabe, can you talk to the sightline thing that we discussed?
Yeah, I mean, so all stages are not created equal, right? You can go to different venues and they're oriented differently, they're for different types of performances. But for a performance space like you have today, to get to 1,000 seats, to maintain those sight lines and keep you close enough to the stage, you can only go back so far. So that's when you start seeing things like balconies added, or you start seeing that seating flare out more on the left and the right. It's all so that it can kind of pivot back to that stage area and keep you at a distance where you can still see what's going on. Those are the sight lines. Now, as you go up, as you can see in the diagram down below, you start to hit other limitations based on the opening of your stage. So if you go higher, then you can actually see underneath that stage proscenium, you can't actually see everything that's happening. You can't see the backdrops, you can't see actors that are up on platforms and things like that. So there's, all of that is a balance that you're trying to maintain.
Is it even possible, I'm sorry.
No, no.
Is it even possible to have a 6,800 square foot addition on that, the footprint where it is right now, is to expand?
I would say, money aside, anything is possible. But it would be such a reconstruction, it probably would not be recommended.
And Gabe, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, in order to get that, you almost would have to go to the library.
Yes,
So you can
you do have a
imagine
limit.
sitting in the
yeah.
library and it's looking at the stage.
Right.
Yeah,
You know, that's,
and at that building, because of the way it was designed, there are limitations on how close we can get to the library too. There is a limit there where we've got to leave a gap and we've got to leave space too.
So it sounds to me like it's not even just a renovation, like demolition.
Yeah.
And
Completely new facility.
New supports, new foundations.
Yes.
Yeah. At that point, it would just be recommended that you just build new.
Even with, like the flare out, not going back, but going on the sides?
Well, if you think about that, right, you've got classrooms and hallway on both sides of that. So to flare out, now you've offset those classrooms and that hallway space. They have to go somewhere else too. So you're kind of pushing other things out of the way to make more space for what you need.
Do you have a cost estimate for this?
We did some pricing based on number of seats and square foot, and the cost for a new pack or area for here would be around $18 to $20 million to do what Gabe's suggesting would have to be done.
Just keep in mind, you're not only building a new structure within your structure, you're demoing out the old structure, and it's trying to tie it all back in.
You'd be better off building new someplace.
Yeah, it's not just a new
Grounds.
building, it's all the contingent areas that surround the space that have to get reconfigured as well. So it's kind of like taking your countertop out in your kitchen only, but you end up getting to do the whole kitchen in the end. It's a fair analogy, probably. It gets to be complicated.
Especially in an older building where once you start doing demo and then perhaps find other things that you have to address, it becomes a cost constraint.
And just for context, so each of the three sites, the Central Grade School, Central High School, West Senior High, the staff wanted an expansion to 1,200 seats ideally at each one of these.
again, that's the kind of venue they would like. We have had some discussions, and I think there's some different thoughts now from our music staff. More about instructional spaces than auditoriums, but at the same point, still on that, we wanted to make sure to bring that data back to the board that was requested, and then we can have conversations from there about instructional spaces. But from that standpoint, yes, I mean, if you look at Corson, Interlaken's a little over 1,000, around 1,050, I think. When you look at Celine, you look at Jennison, they're sitting around 1,100, 1,200 seats. So that was kind of the model that was thought there, but you know, you can see that 1,000, what that would do, let alone, you know, that. So.
And just in terms of demand, I mean, are they finding that, you know, they sell out of all of their productions and they
No, there are just a few that they do. You know, I think for the most part, you know, a lot of times it is, but there are times where we're just, you take West High School, we can't get all the parents in for honors, you know, with a lot of the things. I mean, there's no doubt, I mean, you can think 496, I mean, you know, a student body can't sit in there. You know, I mean, 2 classes can't sit in there, you know, from that standpoint. So I think that's, you know, there are times where we do just have to rent courses, you know, to be able to do some of the events and things that they want to do. And that's what they would love to not have to do. At the same point, I think our recent conversations that I've had with Wendy is I think that right now they're a little bit more focused on the instructional space and would like to see a lot done with all of their buildings in that aspect. And they've given us some direction and some things that will, I think, be able to show the board some tonight. And that have already been kind of in the priority 1 and 2 items. But at this point, you know, I've had the conversation already a little bit with them about, you know, the preliminary things back from the architects and CMs is that it's a tough go of, you know, because, I mean, our auditoriums that we have now, I think a lot of people think that they're nice and they're, you know, they are very effective for use. And so I think the hard part is, you know, going to the community and saying, we're going to tear something down that's really nice to have something that's larger, and that's a tough deal. And it's just, unfortunately, this idea, at least, you know, as you'll see with the other 2 as well, just aren't as feasible as at one point we wanted to explore in Culvers.
Yeah, okay. I could ask more, but I'll pause in the interest of time. Thank you.
One more question. When you're talking about the student body, where's your largest seating capacity at Central? Is it in the gym?
That's correct.
And about how many does that seat? Not that I suggest a performance goes there, but.
I mean, that's where they do all their whole school assemblies,
Yeah.
so they have.
If I had to guess, 1,300, 1,200, 1,300, but, you know, Central High School, that's a whole nother story because the bleachers are not very great shape. You know, you have a lot of ADA issues and stuff like that. So, but yes, whenever there's any time that's the case, you know, but you can imagine for music, unfortunately, those are not very
it's
strong
not
acoustical.
performance, but
You know, we
it's-
do the booster event generally we have at Central because we get a lot of people there. You know, we pack that building out, quite
Yeah,
frankly, you know, with
been
it.
there.
But obviously, it's just not the venue we'd all want from that standpoint, you know, for our music program. But, so this is, you know, it's something that I think there's some ideas to throw around here beyond this, that, you know, we're talking. But, you know, right now, we're just bringing back to the board the question they had about the feasibility here.
All right, you ready to move on?
Next slide.
This one gets better. Lars Hockstead.
Thank you.
So I won't
Sure,
repeat
we're not
everything
pencil.
because I'm sure you'll start to pick up on a common theme here. But at Lars Hockstead, you have 814 seats. That's a combination of just under 600, I think it's like 580 on the main floor, into 20, 30, don't quote me, but the total is 814 seats between the 2 levels. Again, looking for 1,000 seats, it would require the same 15,000 square feet of seating area by itself. So that would add up to an addition of about 5,950 square feet to the existing space. The other complication with Lars Hockstead is that the stage area, if you can remember, is kind of pinched against the hallway and the other classrooms at that north end of the building. So if you start pushing and pulling, and it means we need to reconstruct that stage. And you'd need about another 5,000 square feet of stage area, either in renovation or addition. It's your smallest stage of the 3, actually, and there is not support and backup space behind it like there are at the other buildings. So it has some other challenges as well. Again, which all add up to about the same thing. The other complication there is that you have a 3rd story on top of that space. So to do anything with that structure underneath, you'd have to find a way to support that 3rd story, move columns underneath it, do other structural modifications to be able to do anything to enlarge that space, which you can imagine is quite expensive, and in most cases, it would not happen. It's just
I didn't realize that.
logistically
I
too
didn't
hard.
realize that the third floor is above the
Actually
auditorium.
above the auditorium. Yep.
Because you have been up there since 1970.
The good news is you have more seats here currently, but it's pretty shoehorned into where it's at.
Let me just ask a hypothetical question. Because I can see where this is going, and I appreciate the input of the staff and what they're saying their priorities are for classrooms. So, I mean, if in this particular bond, we collectively decide that the auditorium expansion is out of the question, but we're looking to renovate Central Grade School, I just want to ask, can we be sure to have some plans, forward thinking about potentially if that auditorium were to be expanded down the road, that the renovation at Central Grade School wouldn't, impede us in some way, that we scratch our head and say, oh, why didn't we think of that, we close some door.
I think the existing space already impedes any future expansion, mainly because it's structural. So the hallway directly to the west of the auditorium is the complete column structure for that side of the second and third floor. So if you want to expand out at all, it is replacing that whole structure that holds up the entire second and third floor. So if we probably wouldn't address that in this bond unless there was a decision to do something like this. So we wouldn't be impeding it in the future, it's already impeded.
What's the cost estimate on this?
The door's closed.
He didn't even try to do one because of the structural the analysis. That can be very, very expensive alone. It's hard to quantify that until you get an engineer on site to really do a structural analysis and make a recommendation, then cost it out. Because there's probably more than one way to do it. One of the ways is eliminating the use above that auditorium, but that cuts down on how much actual square foot we have for instructional space. So that would limit the feasibility of other things that we would probably do with Central Grade as a school.
Okay. Do we have good news with West?
No, that one's different worse.
Yeah.
Different worse.
Jeez.
Different words.
It's the way it's oriented
Yeah.
doesn't really allow for expansion.
Yeah. So to not be a broken record, but yes, it's the same situations, but even slightly worse. So you have a really good stage at West, but it's on the outside of the building, which was probably designed that way because it did give good access to the back of stage, to bring in props and other things like that. But it's then pinching that seating against the commons cafeteria side of the building. So to go back any further would mean taking that space out if the stage doesn't move. So it again, if it were to be reconfigured, it would mean rebuilding the stage as well at West Senior. Again,
Likely turning the
and
orientation.
turning it so that you can then fan out the seating in a different direction or a different angle. It also has the same mechanical mezzanine situation that Central High does, where that's actually behind the seating area between the cafeteria and the auditorium. So any movement that way would offset that mechanical mezzanine as well, and it would have to get rebuilt somewhere else.
So we're not gonna Cirque du Soleil this stage and make it like a revolving stage?
Could.
Wouldn't that be cool? But
Yep.
way.
Or
Sorry,
or
my
you just have
liability
to
brain doesn't go there.
Put on another performance. It's a lot easier to put on another performance than it is to cost out all the physical modifications that you would need.
I guess I'm just a little shocked just because having gone to Traverse City Central when there was just one high school and our class sizes, I mean, I graduated with 825 kids. So now we built, it's like, I don't understand how when they were planning, at least for West, to say, okay, we've got X amount of kids at the high school, build a bigger facility.
Well, I wasn't here, but I can tell you there are many parts of that building that there's a term that will make a lot of these folks cringe called value engineering. And, you know, when costs were high, they scaled things down, you know, and a lot of times, and there's things that we see that, you know, just were not, they were very efficient to the point where it didn't allow for a lot of expansions, and it was just not probably what it could have been. And, you know, you see that for whatever reason, you know, I've been in multiple districts with buildings that have been built in that time period of about 25 to 30 years ago. And that just is a theme for some reason, that they were just very built compact and the most efficient and cheapest way you could do that. And so it just didn't allow for some of those things to think about, hey, what if in the future you wanted to do this? It was just about, okay, what's the bottom dollar you can do that for, and that's where that is. And so it's always so hard for us, I mean, to go back 25 years and can't change it, you know, but that is, there are multiple times that we see that in that building, you know, and East Middle as well, that we see that built in that same time frame period, that it just wasn't there for that feasibility to do, unfortunately.
Was there any place that they could build a freestanding, larger auditorium?
Sure, there's that. We have land all over the place, and, you know, you do have different spots from that, but, you know, that, so if you looked at, but both sides of town, you know, from that element, I mean, when you're in a 2 high school town and, you know, somebody has to travel, somebody doesn't, and, you know, the community had that debate, you know, over, you know, really a decade ago, and that just wasn't supported from that standpoint. So I think that that's something that we collectively also have to put into play in this and thought. And so I've had those conversations with our music staff in that element, and that's where I think they've come to the thing that really right now they also need instructional space. You know, the reality is they're very tight, and many board members have had the chance to see the spaces they're working in. They said, you know, really it's our everyday space is probably the most important right now. And there's things that we believe we can do with that. And so I think at this point, that's the feasible thing looking at, that I think we've shifted some of our mind to, and I know they have as well. And so there's much of that thought in, I think, some of the things that you'll see here today.
Okay.
Not to give up on the thought, I think that there's some opportunity to explore some things with our community college. I've got a meeting set up with Nick Nisley, the president of NMC, the TSO. I think there's some conversations possibly about a community venue that I'm excited about trying to, you know, start and have. That I think that we could look at, you know, is there a chance, as, you know, there was a state appropriation for the senior center, some of that, can we begin to look at some of that, especially in partnership maybe with a college, that might allow us to find some accessibility to a partnership that serves our community as a whole, that many, you know, are kind of really striving for that same kind of opportunity for their constituent of, you know, students as well, the college and TSO. So maybe there's a way for us to look at that, but right now I think we've shifted this opportunity towards first those instructional spaces based on that staff input.
I understand.
It's too bad we can't get a field house that could double as.
Now you're talking.
Or a field
Performance
house
venue.
at one school and
But again, I think, you know,
Field house that was
the hardest part that
acoustically.
they have is, you know, you remember, you're trying to move timpani drums and you're, you know, talking to the staff. I mean, that's really hard to go from that standpoint. And so, and they also strive that if we're ever gonna do this, let's build it quality where we're not in this same issue
Yeah.
again. You know, that, you know, again, 1,000 is not really what they'd like. So, you know, are we better off trying to look at an opportunity with our community to have a broader discussion of a true high-performance venue with that? And I think that is possible. I think that there's philanthropy in the community, others to do. But I think that's a conversation outside the scope of the bond at this point. One I'm willing to work with and lead and talk to my counterparts in the community. I think it's important for our kids to do that. Just like I said, right now, I think we've shifted our thoughts more to all those instructional spaces that are used every day for our kids are desperately in need of a lot of work. Many have not really been touched since they were built in the 50s and 60s. So.
Dr. Van Wagoner, so what about the middle schools? Have the faculty talked at all about expanding those 2 auditoriums? Would that be
No,
desirable
it was
to
more, I
them?
mean, we looked at, again, there's nothing to expand. You would just be building completely from new at that point. And I think that you again get the high schools are transporting, all those elements to and from.
So the high schools are the priority, okay.
Yeah,
And then
you
the
know.
other question I just had is, what about 700 to 800 seats for these facilities? Is that, all things considered, they're still saying, no, we'd rather have the classrooms, or would that be maybe too few extra seats?
I think
Not
they'd
even worth
like
it?
some extra seats. We've even looked at some feasibility with that. There's not a lot, there from that standpoint. With that is something they did put in, their thoughts of could some extra seats be added. I think that's still to figure out, but definitely not a lot based on what they're saying
Not
in
even
those
in the
elements.
200 range, 2 to 3
Yeah,
range.
anything beyond what you have right now, you're gonna have the same structural
Mechanical,
issues,
yeah.
mechanical
Okay.
issues. It's,
I agree with what John said about, I think that, the music we need to listen to the music teachers and what they want. And right now they're focusing on their classrooms and teaching spaces. And I think they'd be willing to wait to when we could do it right to get a nice performance venue.
All right.
It wouldn't necessarily only be TCAPS per se. If you're
Yeah, I think that's a
including
conversation we can look at
TSO.
with that. I think it's a way to, as a community, to rally and get behind a beautiful facility that, would meet everybody's needs. And that's the direction I'd like to take with it, and see if I can put some leadership and get a coalition of our folks. I've had already kind of the chance to talk with Traverse Connect and, our Chamber of Commerce group, and trying to put maybe a group together to look at what that might look like, as a possibility with that. And again, a meeting with Nick Nestle, and really look at, like I say, let's see if our community and as a whole, if we can do this right. And I just think right now that's a different venue than this discussion. But I do want to make sure to identify that, our music facilities are very, very important to I think collectively to the board in this bond, and that the instructional spaces are what really, they need a lot of work. And I think that I'm committed to really trying to work with the board to address those and see what we can do along that scope to see, if we can touch every building, in that sense, to make sure that our kids have great day-to-day facilities. And then simultaneously having discussions to tackle that maybe in a different way.
All right. The next ask was to come back with the list of the top 10. So full disclosure, I didn't do that, but I have a really good reason as to why I didn't do that. It's really challenging to look at specific building needs and to prioritize one over the other, especially not knowing when we might be able to address them. So what I did is I categorized it. So I had, it kind of naturally just fit as it relates to some of those items were all buildings, maybe not every single one, but a little bit at each one. Secure entrance vestibules, we still have 3 buildings that don't have them. Safety infrastructure improvements, a lot of that is improved fire suppression systems and improved doors and locks, and maybe magnets on some of the other doors to allow teachers to leave the door open without having to put a shim underneath the door, so they can leave it locked on the outside. Traffic improvements, this one, there's several buildings that would like to switch bus and parent. As you guys know, we have many more parents picking up and dropping off students to where we need a little bit more room for parents versus the school buses. But trying to maintain separation of buses, cars, and pedestrians is important for safety reasons. So that is kind of one category that came to light. And then, as John said, we do have several buildings that are in need of new bleachers, and for sure with new and improved ADA access. So that, I kind of put an estimated cost to that. And the estimated cost is kind of a range of what actually could possibly be done in this bond scope. Again, I'm not so sure that this entire bond, depending on some of the bigger projects that we do, could last up to 10 years. But given the scope of what we have in a huge project like Central Grade School, what would be feasible to do? I mean, we have some constraints as it relates to how many trades and companies are even in the area to bid on things. Many of our current projects now, we're having a hard time to get work done. They don't have the laborers, so it's becoming an issue, an even bigger issue. So just knowing that, thinking that between 2 and 5 million would work within the scope of this entire bond. And I always am a proponent on recommending some generic language at this point, because it's really hard if you put one building. It seems like a promise to the community that you're doing that one project, and in 3 years, if this other building, something drastic happens and now it's the priority, it's really hard to go back and tell the community you changed it, where when you have something like this, you can on an annual basis have a conversation about your priority in bond money for this year. And you bring data to the table to say why this one's gonna come first before this one. And it's something you talk about on an annual basis before you sell bonds. So I always recommend generalities. We always still can have some highlighted projects like Central Grade. That's part of the informational campaign, but this allows us to do any of all of this and prioritize which buildings that takes place at as the needs change. Then I took a stab at the elementary buildings. Classroom additions and renovations. This would be if there's no addressing current issues with enrollment as it relates to open enrollment. So the board certainly can make other decisions, but as it stands right now, we've got 4 buildings pushing for a need for some additions. And that kind of goes into also maintaining dedicated spaces for music and art. As classroom numbers go up, naturally spaces that are dedicated for music and art become classrooms unless there's some type of addition or a decision by the board to handle it differently. Cafeterias with standard square footage. So we do have some buildings that have smaller square foot for cafeteria based on the total students in the building. So that is something that can be very problematic. Having to have more lunches really pinches the time that they have for scheduling. So we do have some elementary buildings that really could use expanded cafeteria space to be able to run more efficient lunches. Additional renovated spaces for supporting personnel. We have many more adults in our buildings now, and a need for them to have spaces to work with students in small groups. That's becoming a pretty high need. Lockers in some of our older buildings or additional lockers are needed. And then any potential library media center renovations or anything we wanted to do in the future as it relates to bringing STEM to elementary or maker spaces or anything to do with robotic spaces. And then workrooms. Again, typically what happens to workrooms when you have more adults in the building is those go away so that adults can meet with kids in small groups. And so the need to either expand those spaces for supporting personnel or workrooms is pretty prevalent in almost all of our elementaries.
Also, what about playgrounds?
You know what, we recently spent a little over $500,000 on playground upgrades to equipment. And so we've taken a really good stab at that. I don't think we have any requests right now from any elementary for anything additional than what we provided. But we do have in our current bond money set aside for playground upgrades, and so they analyze that every year. And we have a certified playground inspector on staff.
And I remember at our last meeting in August, you talked about how there are drainage issues at
Yes.
every playground. That's what, a priority 1 or 2?
That is part of overall safety infrastructure improvements.
Okay.
Because what happens there, and I know sometimes safety can be, it can be argued if it's a safety concern or not, but unfortunately on some of the playgrounds, as the water pools in the middle of a playground, it creates ice in the winter and it does become a safety hazard, or they simply can't use those spaces. And that's prevalent in probably at least 4 of our elementary schools. So that would be one of the high needs.
And there's also the problem with shade in some of them.
Yep, we did add one shade structure as part of that $500,000 project. So every elementary has a shade structure, but I'm sure they could use more.
As I'm reading through the packet you provided last time, a lot of the elementary schools have rerouting of like parking, like you just said, there's more parents driving
Yep.
and those kind of things, and those are in the undefined. Can you talk a little bit about that money and what that would be used for? I guess just because
Sure.
it was, when I looked through a lot of the elementary, it added up to a lot of money of routing, redirecting? So I'm just curious.
So I don't know if you remember, so we've done 2 so far. We did Silver Lake. Now that one was a little bit more costly because we had to purchase property, but they didn't even have a separation at all in their original loop. It was just parents and buses together. So we added a whole entrance and expanding the parking lot. Inherently, whenever you add pavement, you have to deal with the water issues and the retention issues. So you're talking about bigger systems to handle and redirect that water. The other thing that is always an issue is the curb cutting and the sidewalks. So for a bus, you really try not to have a curb because the step down from the bus and then a step up to the curb is difficult for students. But for cars, you want a curb. So it's some of those things that just tend to get a little bit more expensive. And then in the secondary, this is why it's all buildings here, but at the secondary, West Senior High needs a massive redirection of traffic. There's no separation of any of the 3. So there's a pretty big price tag related to that one
And
alone.
do you think is it a safety concern as to these reroutings and separating, or is it I guess I'm just trying to evaluate the need and the undefined.
So, we're unfortunately in a situation now where adults aren't necessarily doing what we're asking them to do as it relates to flow of traffic. And so we do have concerns with parents letting kids out in the middle of a parking lot or in the middle of the street or in the middle of a lane where another car is going. So I think from that aspect, the principals would say it's a safety concern. And just the fact that sometimes we have to change things to respond what people are actually doing because we can't control the behavior. And the fact that they're using those spaces that way anyway, if we just built it that way, it would be much safer and more efficient for everybody.
And then one other quick thing that you touched on is regarding open enrollment. So when I look at Eastern, I look at Willow Hill and the adding up the classrooms. I think that's something that I think as a board, we need to kind of have a conversation before we would say in an undefined that we would approve money to go towards an expansion if that changes.
Yeah.
The worst thing would be you build an addition and then you have empty classrooms.
You build it and they don't come.
Yeah.
They don't
And
come.
that's kind of Christine's point, I think, about why the board looks at that every year. So if you look at, so let me give you an example of that right now is, we just don't know what's going to happen. Look at the growth of housing that's happening in East Bay Township, right? What does that mean for the future? It could mean, oh my gosh, we're already packed at Cherry Knoll, but maybe it doesn't, right? And so that's why as this goes a little bit for the board to identify, here's money here for classrooms, and then look at what's happening and decide, okay, wow, all of a sudden Long Lake is now starting to see a growth. Now you go, okay, so Long Lake then maybe is where we have to address, but, or maybe that doesn't happen. And so I think it's important that the board has that dollars, and then the board as moving through the future knows that there's some ability there to be able to do that. And then, and if not, then the board makes some other decisions. But I think you know that that's a possibility with the housing that we're seeing put in and that element. We're just not exactly sure where that is. And if the board were to say, on a couple of buildings, we're gonna stop that, then all of a sudden you see an influx at another one, you go, okay, we're not gonna add it there, we're going to add it there in the future.
Right, but like I look at Long Lake and that's a new building. And we're already proposing, no?
It feels new, but it was 2010, 11.
Newer,
Yeah.
but in the undefined, it's showing adding classrooms to Long Lake.
And they are between them and Traverse Heights, it's pretty close as to who needs it worse, but Long Lake has seen an influx of enrollment of move-in students because they've got that new apartment complex by West Senior High. So some of that is dictated by regular students moving into the district, not necessarily open enrollment. But yeah.
Right, we have to accommodate those who live within the boundaries of a given school, but then the question is, do we also accommodate the growth from school of choice? And
Yeah.
that's your point, and I'm in agreement with you. And that's also a policy decision on
And,
our
and that's a
part.
decision, like I say, it's not defined that, we're doing that space, because if the board does make that decision, it obviously affects that you wouldn't do that, but it probably does mean still in the future, you're going to have a couple of other buildings with some population shifts that we're gonna have, that are probably most likely going to have to be addressed. I mean, I look right now at that situation out at East Bay Township, and there are massive amounts of apartments, and though at some point that's going to shift, I mean, where you're probably gonna have to do something there, and I think that, again, and look at Long Lake, same way, Westwood just had it.
Westwoods, yep.
Westwoods was not kind of projected in that, then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
it was, and so we had to add 4 classrooms out there, in that was not really, I can tell you, when the 2018 bond was passed, that was not a thought.
Yeah.
That's not where that building was thought was gonna be expanded. So I think having an understanding that at some point you're going to need that, but then the board each year looking at that demographic data to say, okay, based on this is where we need to do it, not maybe where we originally thought, or we've made a policy decision to not add on to those, so that's where it's gonna go moving forward. So I think having that flexibility is important to not do that, because you may make a decision as a board that reverses anything. You don't want to come out and say, oh, we're gonna add on to X school, then go, we've made a policy that doesn't make that happen. And everybody goes, well, wait a minute, you said you were gonna do that.
Right.
So I think that's why this concept is important.
Yeah, Long Lake's in the middle of an expansion. There's a lot of planned development right now. And,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
of course, all the conversations are happening, whether it's the Dollar General or there's all these apartment complexes and townhome complexes that people are talking about right now.
And we just don't know 4 years down the road what that's even gonna look like yet, even that. That's the key part here, is you just don't know when you're in the series of selling bonds. We can't look into a crystal ball and really know where that is, but I think it's a pretty safe bet by the building that we have, it's going to be somewhere.
And like Traverse Heights is a good example. Lafreniere Road, I mean, I don't think there's any trees left on the whole entire road. And they're seeing an influx of students. I think they're probably 40 students higher than they've been for the last couple of years. So, and I see that continuing as they continue more of the apartments and unless you want to redistrict, which I do not recommend. So anyway, I'll get to the secondary, but what I'm trying to show is that when you have items like this, having a dedicated pot of money, if you will, to address these, and then the work becomes on an annual basis, looking at, every month I give the district upcoming purchases at the end of the board meeting. So having sessions with the board to decide, what do we want our projects to look like? Where do we want to focus? Let's look at new data on enrollment. The cafeteria standard, that's a big deal to Traverse Heights right now. They're really, really struggling with 40 new students in an already pinched space. They have, I can't remember the number of square feet that they have less than the other buildings, and it's a challenge. So then on the secondary side, upgrades to aging infrastructure, ongoing work to create some facility standards. And by that, I mean we've been setting standards in other buildings and trying to maintain that through all the secondary buildings going forward. Improving ADA access, there's 2 buildings really that kind of stick out in this category, although naming them here isn't helpful for the future. But quite honestly, it's no secret Central High and West Middle School are our oldest buildings and are the most aged facilities that need some pretty big upgrades, especially as it relates to ADA access. Providing adequate space in the facilities for programming needs. So there's been a lot of changes. We don't have home ec anymore, and we've kind of made that room work for them, but we really didn't change it to the new programming that they're using in that space. Locker rooms, we've done a couple, but there's still more to do. And there's changing expectations about locker rooms too. Wrestling rooms, again, making sure we have a standard for the district and providing what each school needs. Gym capacity, Central High School does not have the capacity that West Senior High has, and surprisingly, today they're pretty darn close in enrollment. They're not as drastically different as they used to be. And then, as you saw from the list, band, orchestra, choir, theaters, so addressing some of those needs as it relates to instructional spaces. And support spaces, and then any renovated spaces that the board would like to do moving forward for robotics or STEM, perhaps at the middle schools.
And in time, you may see a shift back towards more skills also in your high schools, which is a different kind of space
Yeah.
entirely.
Sorry, so regarding the renovated spaces for robotics and STEM, I understand, I mean, wouldn't that be covered with the new innovation and manufacturing centers?
If you want to do something at the middle schools,
Oh,
I
okay,
kind of lumped
gotcha.
all secondaries together.
Gotcha.
So I know they have robotics programs. I believe they have a couple classes, but I don't think they have the spaces to do some of the advanced.
And we've had the chance to see those, and I
Opportunities.
think, you know, especially at East Middle School, I think just some renovations, you know, I think the room spaces, I think West is a little bit more challenged, but I think, you know, talking to as we've gone through the innovation and manufacturing centers of having a space that maybe our elementaries would have access to as well on, you know, each side, having those programs with our middle school kids to can build that, you know, pre-K-12 pipeline through that, you know, we would like to put some attention to, you know, putting some renovations to those areas. Not really probably a wholesale large construction, you know, as far as square footage, but definitely renovations to make those spaces closer to what the technologies and things they're going to see as they move on to our new innovation and manufacturing labs.
Thank
And
you for
those
putting
were
this together.
spelled out in this too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, for the middle schools specifically. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
just say, I like what you've put together. We asked for at least 10, and you
Yeah.
did 19. If you add up the sub-bullets and the main bullets.
Well, I got
so
stuck
thank you.
on like my first one or two because when you do one project, that might it make sense if you're already there to do some other things. Even those other things I wouldn't have done before another project, but you're looking at it from a respect of efficiency and effectiveness and cost effectiveness. So if you're already at the site, it makes sense to do everything that needs to be done there or
Right.
as much as you can.
Right, thinking
Um,
long-term.
Yeah. And so I just put the estimated cost as a range, and then, you know, as I have the updated summary for you guys, just the bottom part is just kind of my way of starting to make a recommendation, and it's just informational purposes, but if you add up those lower estimates, it would be 30 million set aside for unallocated, and by having that conversation, it doesn't tie our hands to one specific project, it doesn't tie us to 20 million with secondary. This is just informational, but if we have 30 million available, then as we do our work, as we talk about bond sales, we prioritize those items with new information. And what projects you can do at the same time. You know, I gotta be honest, when we're working on central grade school, it's gonna be all central grade school. And to put too many more projects out there with like trades is competing markets, and we just will need to be careful about that.
Drives the price.
Plus,
I
you
kinda-
all have only so much capacity.
Yeah, that too.
Right.
Illinois.
I come up with 3 different totals for the undefined. In the column, it looks like it totals 83,900,000. This is about just under 50 million. And then down in the bottom of the page, undefined allocation is 30 million.
So my recommendation is setting aside 30 million for these things. This is not everything in the whole entire category. So you'd ask me to come out with the top undefined items that I believe should be part of this bond. There's many things that are not here.
Okay, so then you're saying recommending 30 million for the undefined allocation.
Which means there perhaps is 53 million of work that we might not get to.
Right.
And then there's also 45 million of priority 3 that's not getting done as well.
Yeah. And we haven't gotten to that yet, but the reason for that is a lot of that really can be tied to performance management. That's why I lumped that category together. So I just took a look at how many items didn't look like it could be done by Train or as part of a performance management contract, and that's where I came up with the 15. But I think there's a really good argument that a lot of the other things can be tackled by working with them.
And over time into the future, you know, a lot of lighting, a lot of lighting. You know, that, again, I think, you know, we could look at over the next 3 to 5 of possibly another performance management contract as there creates some more capacity within, you know, debt rate, millage rate, to be able to do that and really concentrate on HVAC lighting water, that the train would be able to do, or whoever you work with in the future with that. It's just their efficiencies, but there's a lot of lighting, a lot of lights that are not LED
Yeah.
in this district.
Can I just
Shocking amount.
make sure that I'm thinking about this correctly too? Because when you just mentioned about when you're at one campus, you might as well just go ahead and do as much as you can because you've got the trades there and everything. So then some of, concerning the music requests, then with that thought in mind, some of that could be maybe even done during priority 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
Correct.
And a lot of the items that were on the sheet sent by Wendy were already embedded into priority 1, 2, and 3. So again, it would be an analysis when we go to sell bonds and we determine what we're going to do with that bond money. It would be having a conversation about priority 1 and 2, and then are there other things that we should be doing at that building to gain some efficiencies on cost?
Right. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Christine, what in the undefined category? So you've got the 30 to 46 million. Like, what didn't make the cut? And that.
Please say that again, sorry.
So the whole undefined category is 83.9 million, and we've specified 30 to 45, 46.
So items like converting current locker rooms to gym and leap storage spaces, display cases, kitchen upgrades, classroom upgrades like cabinetry. Let's see, blinds, new drinking fountains. I didn't put it on here. That is part of a plan that facilities does with their operational money.
And there may be some state funds coming possibly too with that.
Additional site lighting, that's kind of something that we already do with other funding. Let's see.
Yay, those were some things I took out of mine.
Yeah. New maker space, that's kind of why I weaved it into elementaries. That could be something that we tackle. Upgrading whiteboards, adding sound control and acoustics. So some of that I would love to get to, but I think at some point there's a lot of other things that are showing as more of a priority.
And possibly some of those things could come out of like annual technology.
Yep.
Or building level funds.
Yep.
Which you've got 25 million. Is that 25 million? That's annual allocations. That includes like our bus annual allocation.
That's just technology.
Yeah.
So I separated annual allocation. Let's just pull that summary sheet up, Megan. Can you click on the updated summary, please? So if you can make it bigger, that'd be great. So what I tried to do was just show, so priority 1 and 2, we've kind of already had agreement that those are the most important areas. Looking at about 100 million for that. I put 15 for priority 3 because I really took a look at that and looked at how much lighting was involved and how that potentially could be a performance management conversation. So just knowing those two kind of go hand in hand. And we have other options with performance management. I left the annual allocations blank because that would be something we would need to discuss. Typically, we have a bus allocation, a music, athletics, VPAA, operational equipment for facilities, so I currently don't have an allocation there. For technology, I have 25 million. I don't consider that an annual allocation or really something up for conversation, given I believe there's an expectation to maintain what we have 1-to-1 and all of our facilities upgraded. So that's what we need in the full scope of the bond, and that's only assuming 8 years. So that would just be a technology allocation. And then the undefined was 30. So just kind of showing you overall where we're already at.
So those other annual allocations, like what are those typically? I don't know off the top of my head. But.
Sure. Well, music, I think they get 96,000 a year, or maybe it's every 2 years. I think it's every year. I think it's 96 every year, and then
It's
almost
given every
200, yeah. But mostly that is equipment. It's really hard when you give some of these annual allocations. There's a lot of things that don't even qualify for bond. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that music needs, but if it doesn't qualify for bond, it's not really helpful. So they'll typically buy risers or equipment like we just approved recently. They can't even buy band uniforms out of here. That's why we do a general fund allocation every so many years. So that's what they've used it for. The VPAA allocation has been a challenge. Again, it's really hard for the arts to find things that are eligible for bond money. We've done kilns, we've done a standard upgrade to all kilns, but we can't buy consumables, paper and chalk and
Reeds and
yeah,
strings and
yeah.
mouthpieces.
So
Not that
it's
you
a
haven't tried.
Right.
sometimes it's probably even frustrating to them that we give them an allocation, they don't know what to get. We help as much as we can. Obviously, within VPAA, we also have like digital media, so they have a little bit easier time with cameras and equipment. And we just recently did the East Middle School renovation of the classroom with that money. Operational equipment is pretty much all of our facilities equipment, custodial equipment. So that would be snow blowers, not trucks. We can't buy trucks, but we can buy the plow to put on it. So lawnmowers, even like floor scrubbers. They take all of our radios out of that money, our secure radios. They also do drinking fountains. They have a whole plan for that and upgrades. So that's what the operational equipment money is for. Athletics, sometimes they struggle too because a lot of stuff that they need is not something that's eligible for bond, but we usually are able to help them with something, resurface a track or something like that. We really have touched a lot of athletics recently, so I'm not sure that an annual allocation, if it's needed, doesn't even need to be as high as it used to be. Again, there's a lot that they would like to do that we can't buy mats. Those are not eligible for bond money. What are some of the other categories? Buses, we likely don't need to buy as many buses as we have been. I think our buses are gonna last longer with the new bus wash, so I don't think $1 million a year is needed. I'm not even sure half of that is needed. But one of the things that I'm kind of coming to a little bit of a recommendation on is maybe the annual allocations needs to be a pot of money that there's discretion on, because sometimes when you give somebody a pot of money, they'll just spend it because they have it, and maybe there was another need in another category that we were aware of and didn't know how to help them.
So, yeah, that we had a question about why that's blank on this sheet, because if,
I ran out of money.
yeah, 180 is the cap.
There's $1 million left. I don't know that that's enough for the annual allocations, but these are just kind of the beginnings of a recommendation. And honestly, if we sell 180, we don't even have to stick with these numbers being set. We can make those decisions as we talk about our informational campaign. We used to always say the annual allocations and list them. We're not tied to that. In fact, it's a little bit easier not to be tied to that. So this is just trying to gather, this is what all this costs. And again, I'm thinking maybe this would get us through 8 years. I'm not really sure. Central grade is the big unknown. Until we really get that done, it's gonna be hard to have a lot of conversation about this other stuff. I mean, obviously, along the way, we're gonna be doing boilers simply because, oh, by the way, we just spent $20,000 in the last 2 weeks just starting them all up, and they're not all up. But we naturally will do some of that. But when you're doing a big project, we're really gonna wanna try to focus on that to make sure, if property values go down, that we're not tying our hands to have to value engineer like they did at West Senior High. So we wanna be really careful that if we really wanna get central grade done, that's the forefront, and the other stuff is gonna have to probably be put on hold until we know how that one lands.
And these are current year dollars, not
Right.
adjusted for escalation of costs,
Yep.
so, yeah.
What is escalation?
Right, no, but
Yeah.
in the 180.
Yeah, my addition is all on the base. But the nice thing is we have a lot of flexibility. So I do think it's important to highlight some projects for the informational campaign, but at some point you don't want to highlight too many specific projects, just so that in 2 years, I mean, we've had some really horrible conversations at previous boards. I mean, we had a school up for complete redo, and that whole township voted no for the bond, and kids just left the school and we ended up closing it. So, naming a school that needs an upgrade or a renovation is probably not a great idea. the other example is the additions. So we actually had $2 million set aside for Long Lake to have an addition. And after COVID, like they were busting at the seams before COVID. After COVID, their numbers dropped and Westwood skyrocketed, so we shifted our focus to Westwoods. Plus with programming changes, you know, we've added 7 classrooms of GSRP. And, you know, the enrollment doesn't really add that much. There's only 16 students in that classroom, but it's still a classroom that's needed. And we have two classrooms of GSRP at 2 buildings. And then we add ECSE, and we are renting spaces to Head Start, and trying to get more of our students in our building, and adding junior kindergarten. So sometimes the enrollment number doesn't go up as much as the need for classroom spaces, but
When you say land on a number for central grade, do you envision that before we go into the bond? No.
no.
Okay.
We have rough estimates, but I think until we have a visioning session, which will take a lot of time with central grade, we took probably 3 to 6 months with Montessori, and a lot of that was complicated with some issues with the city. But I think for central grade, like those visioning meetings, that's really where you start to identify what are the priorities for this building before we even start designing it and figuring out what it costs.
And we don't even know what it's gonna look like. We
No.
have no desire.
No. You know, we don't know, like, do you want 2 gyms still? Do you want an elementary gym, or do you want a bigger gym like Montessori? Those all have to be flushed out, and that's gonna drastically change the number. And then we'll figure out when are we actually gonna start construction. That will change the number as well. So you have to have some type of target, but you also have contingencies and flexibility within the whole bond to make the decisions you need to make and be comfortable that we can fund it.
And you feel really strongly about sticking with the 180 number and not going, I think we could go to 200.
We could, but I think that's where we have opportunity with performance management bonds. So if we know we can have a 200 million in debt, then we could do a 180 capital bond, and we could possibly do up to 20 in performance management bonds later on, and they can be in series.
And we're hoping to have that. We have a meeting tomorrow
Yeah.
with Train, and we're hoping maybe next month to be able to bring that to you, to be able to see what that looks like for real, as far as a number and, you know, what that whole program looks like, of what their scope would be that is included, of a lot of the boilers and lights and water and that stuff.
And that money would be more flexible, whereas bond money, it has to be for certain.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
it's for certain items.
Very
It's
specific,
for
actually.
performance management.
Because it has to be things that, you know, improve your efficiencies, so that it's not essentially literally water down the drain. You know, so they're doing faucets because leaky faucets cost you money. They're replacing lights because LED's a lot cheaper electric-wise than, you know, the incandescent bulb. Boilers that are just highly inefficient, the new boilers are massively more efficient and save gas. So that savings then that you have, you're able to make on that payment for those bonds. And so what that does is just, we've kind of included that in here in our scope, in this, of using that for those specific things in here. And that's allowing, you know, to have 20 million, you know, from that standpoint to think about it. But I want the board to be very comfortable with that program, you know, understand what that is, so we're gonna bring them in to come and do a separate presentation.
I apologize if you went over this, but the high school, the secondary music department priorities budget,
Mhm.
where does that fit into this?
That would
Summary.
fit into the undefined under the secondary 20 million.
Okay. So within 30 million, yeah.
And they, we tried to separate out on the actual list that they created to us, what of the list was already budgeted for, if you will, in priority 1, 2, and 3. And the budget that you have is above and beyond what we had embedded into 1, 2, and 3, so it's part of undefined.
Okay. And then how do we feel about, you know, you went with the 30 million, but that's the bottom end of the range, right? Because if you added up your undefineds, it was actually up to 46 million. So how do we feel about putting, you know, to get to 180, you had to go with a lower number, but
Well, and I think, I I don't think we have to approve these numbers as is. I'm just trying to help formulate, 180 is gonna go pretty fast. And trying to maintain, like, let's really focus on central, I'm worried about central grade, and I wanna make sure if we truly wanna get it done, that we focus on it. The worst case scenario is we sell half the bonds in one series and then property values tank and then we can't sell bonds and we're in the middle of a project. So we just have to be very strategic about that. And that's why I'm a little bit hesitant to start too many projects before we really focus on that, because I don't want it to be, we didn't get to it. But I think this is just for discussion purposes, and I try to put that on any document that I show. This is just to try to show you why the recommendation's 180. We can certainly have conversations about annual allocations, and, you know, if we want to take 10 million out of priority 3, or just say somewhere in this we want 10 million for annual allocations and we'll figure it out later, then that can be the conversation. But this isn't anything that we would necessarily provide as part of informational campaigns. It's just showing how I'm coming to the recommendation of 180. And I like having the extra 20 available if we want to move forward with performance management, but I also am concerned about too high of a number at the voter ballot, at the box. I don't want it to be sticker shock. It's not always understood that, you know, we're internally promising 3.1 mils, but that doesn't legally tie our hands to go higher than that. So I want to make sure that people aren't confused with the dollar amount and the millage rate, and what that would do to their taxes with the rate possibly changing, which we are not recommending.
And just a reminder, 3 of us will be up for re-election on that same vote.
That's a big assumption right there.
If we choose to.
Yes, I just heard a re-election.
Oh, well, no.
There we go.
All right, moving on.
Like
What I hope has declared.
I like that. Okay, good thought. I like that.
So, is it a good segue to head back to the rest of the items you'd asked about?
I think so.
And then, obviously, anytime you have questions. So, undefined categories, so then you did ask for a review of multi-purpose facilities, and I don't have like pictures to show or anything, just numbers and to kind of compare to other facilities that were discussed.
We looked at a facility in Brighton, Michigan. They did a 98,000 square foot building for approximately $8 million. And that was designed and awarded and bid before the pandemic impact. Today, an 80,000 square foot building here in Traverse City would be between 10 to 12.5 million. That's after the COVID impact. So as you all know, there's been a change in pricing, and so that's a reflection of that for a multi-purpose facility.
And you use the same concept, pre-engineered.
Pre-engineered building, big open space.
Is that with like a track, what, or just?
Yeah, right. It's very, very conceptual right now with what yours could be, but yeah, with place to play sports, place to do a track, you know, run around in circles and
Robotics tournaments.
Robotics.
Batting cages.
Bathrooms.
Band practice.
Some of the above.
yes, not all.
Yeah.
Some.
And that's a 1-story. We're not talking
Right.
a track
Right.
on the second story.
Right.
or anything.
Right.
No.
And what was the final number of that?
So, an 80,000 square foot facility
Okay.
would be between 10 to 12.5 million.
And what category is that in on our sheet?
It's not.
Okay.
Not.
It was just you'd asked for
Yeah,
information.
yeah, got it. Okay.
80 square foot facility.
80,000?
80,000,
And what was the rest of that?
10 to 12.5 million.
Okay.
And then before the pandemic, 98,000 square foot, about 8 million.
Pandemic.
If we'd only known then what we know now.
Yeah.
Which was probably much higher than it was a year or two before that, too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's higher and it's smaller. Do we have any pictures of the one you cited that they just built one?
I don't have any pictures as part of the presentation.
Gotcha.
We could get them and send them to you.
Yeah.
We just tried to get a like facility and try to come up with a per square foot cost and escalate it to today's dollars.
And you did say the prefab style?
Yep.
Pre-engineered, I was corrected on that today.
Pre-engineered.
But those numbers are not included in even the
Correct.
undefined.
Mhm.
Were they included no, nothing has been
Nope,
included.
it was just one of the items you asked me to come back with information on cost.
And you think that's supply chain stuff? I mean, I know I still can't
And
get
labor.
anything from Amazon from China.
Yeah, it's supply chain. I think it even goes back to the Suez Canal, the Texas freeze. We have a lot of things leading up to the pandemic that were increasing prices, scarcity of materials,
Scarcity of workers.
workers.
We're experiencing that. I mean, even with all the projects we're trying to complete right now, we're experiencing struggles getting things complete because they don't have a workforce. So it's been a challenge.
And Michigan's going to potentially lose population. And you're losing it right where you don't want to lose it, which is in the working year.
But your, included in the numbers though are some estimates around some gym, some of the
Yes.
ADA
Yep.
requirements and some of those upgrades and updates and changes, so.
Yeah, included in the secondary undefined would be some pretty hefty renovations at Central High School specifically to try to get them the 4 gyms that are currently at West. And to address the ADA.
And the wrestling
Yep,
space
yep.
and all of that, so, okay.
And then ADA issues at West Middle School too, that's a concern getting down to that gym.
Yeah.
No.
And bleachers, I know East Middle School, Central High, West Middle got theirs, and several elementary buildings,
But Central High School needs them,
desperately.
yeah.
They're first on the list.
I've been stuck in that elevator lift at West Middle School more times than I can count.
I
So
know.
I'm all for that big one level.
I don't know, maybe it's just going into the season, but I've been pleasantly surprised in the last month of how much easier it is to get skilled trades out. So hopefully that's the start of something.
I think part of our problem is we have so many projects going
Yeah.
on and they're all bidding on all of them. So we have to prioritize our own projects within the scope of the work.
I mean, the higher interest rates on doing work must going to have an impact. I just can't imagine it wouldn't.
So those were the items that you'd asked us to come back with information. The next slide is really kind of a summary. Again, I believe I was given permission to start making somewhat of a recommendation. And I'm just trying to show like the items that are popping up and what we talked about, priority 1, 2, some of the undefined items on the left side really almost mirror the results of the survey that we got from the community staff and students. I was really pleasantly surprised to see staff and students list almost all of those items on the left-hand side. So I think it's no surprise that there needs to be a focus on aging infrastructure. We're talking about a lot of boilers that were done about the same year coming up at the same time, and that's a challenge budget-wise. And simply trying to time out when you do that work. So, there's only so many companies here that do major boiler installations. Performance management in priority 3, again, a lot of that related to lighting upgrades, controls and switches. Controls and switches are a big part of trying to manage those costs and has been helpful in some of our newer buildings. Windows, we need some window upgrades in some buildings that would help hold heat or cool air in. Restrooms, I think you guys have seen a lot of our restrooms and they are in desperate need of updates. Lockers and flooring. Flooring is one we hardly ever get to, unfortunately, but it would be nice to be able to do that in the scope of other projects while we're in buildings. And then those undefined items, just from the categories I listed before. And then I just attached another link here to the updated summary. Again, just kind of going toward the bottom section of it, kind of a draft of what it potentially could look like. And then just a reminder of the survey results, you know, we got nearly 2,000 or a little bit over 2,000 responses, and feels pretty good that we're on track with central grade and safety and security, aging infrastructure, new building systems. It feels like everything's kind of coming to an agreement of everybody thinks these things need to be addressed.
It's actually pretty amazing. I think that goes to, I mean, people are paying attention.
Yeah.
To actually be on the same level with what y'all are thinking, everybody's thinking. And, you know, to go to that, the transparency and the news that's putting out there. Thank you guys over there. I'm looking at you. Ginger. But no, it speaks really well to that. People are getting the information.
Could we get a copy of that page right here?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll get a copy of the whole presentation. Do you want a print copy or just electronic access?
Electronic is fine, and
Okay.
then that way I can just print what I want.
Okay. I'll have Julie send a PDF to all the board members. And then I just kept on here, this isn't something we've really talked about, and I'm sorry, that's a little bit smaller than I would like, but, you know, one of the things that we pay attention to going into a bond is, you know, who are we asking to approve a bond? And as you know, we do have an aging population. This information is from the 2018 August bond vote, and you can see nearly 37% of Grand Traverse County is over the age of 60. I believe if we got new information from any recent votes in the area, you would see that that's even higher. So you're looking at a little bit over 50% is 51 years old or older and may or may not be connected to our school system. So targeting things like aging infrastructure, I think that there would be a lot of support for people not connected to the school district to make sure kids are warm and dry in buildings. So I think those are things naturally that would pop up to highlight in an informational campaign, knowing our audience. And then just talking next steps and timeline, I'll let Mary Ann just kind of wrap that up, and then however you guys would like to move forward.
Yeah, so you have been through everything that Christine, you asked her to do, and you're coming back now to say what needs to happen between now and January. So in January, the intention will be to make decisions around ballot language, election date, and the total dollar amount that you will put out to the public. So as you advertise and move forward with your bond proposal and asking the public for that. So the question really is now, what needs to happen from your perspective as a board of education to say, what do you need to do now between now and January in order to be ready to make some decisions around the ballot language, the election date, and the total dollar amount?
I kind of.
I mean, the thing that stands out, I think we've done a lot of the work on most of those items. I think one of the biggest variables that we still have to figure out is the date. But I think
We only
that's
have two
really,
choices, right?
Yeah,
August or
have to-
November
yeah.
of 2024.
And you also remember have a 10-year renewal of the operating millage also that'll be up at that same time.
Right.
So you go for one, you're gonna have to do the opposite.
I don't recommend two questions for a district on one. And just knowing the community that comes out for each of the votes, I would recommend the operating millage on the November ballot, so it naturally kind of just went to August for the bond.
And you may also get other districts in the state that are doing that same. It's a more common. Again, this is the 18 mills for non-homestead and for commercial property is that operating millage. You might remember we've had to do it a couple times lately because the property values have forced us because of Headley rollback. So we've had to do that, but our actual 10-year renewal, that should be the only time we had to do it, is it will be up in that same period there.
Yeah, do we want to talk about the ridiculousness of that being on the ballot?
I know. That's why I thought we were done with it after the last time. But
Yeah,
we
that was
kicked
just
it
to
for a
deal
year.
with Headley override, but to actually maintain being able to levy 18 mills, you get a 10 years, we go out for 10 years and then you have to renew it.
At what point do we kind of put something like what we've had conversation about in these 2 study sessions out to, you know, parents or community members to say, this is what we're thinking, either affirm that we're on the right track. And I mean, I know we did those pre-surveys, but now that we've had conversation and we're like actually kind of not finalizing a plan, but more final than we were when we did those initial surveys, like, should we do, like, just get confirmation that,
I think it's up to you. We've not done that in the past. Usually what happens after the vote to get the ballot language done, then we start an informational campaign. And that really is, how do we want to target this bond and communicate to the community what the bond is all about? I feel pretty good that we've gotten an initial survey, and we've done quite a few, John and I have done quite a few presentations and gotten a lot of really good feedback. You know, it seems like you're focusing on the things you absolutely need to have. And I think people can get behind that, but that would be up to the board's discretion if you feel like you needed something more.
I mean, I think it's always good. I think we are on the right track, and that's what I hear from the public, but it's always
well,
good
and
to do as much as we can.
I mean, I think it's good, that slide that we just looked at a little bit ago. I mean, I think we're on the path of what those initial surveys were leading us down. So, I mean, I think maybe we probably don't need to do anything, but.
A whole lot of it's there.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
really-
I think it's
Well,
just, you know,
and I don't
more
know
of,
how many people read all of the anecdotal fill-in comments, but a lot of those too were related to, let's take care of this before you go do something like that. So I think there was a general sense that we have some aging buildings, specifically 2 of them need a lot of work.
Really 3.
What's your
2
third?
secondaries and 1 elementary.
Oh, yeah, but that, we already decided.
I know,
we're
but
got
I'm just saying,
consensus on that.
it's 3.
Yeah.
I know the one's a big, you know, central grade, but, you
Yeah.
know, it's central grade,
Yeah.
Central High, and West Middle School.
Yeah.
I think
They're
the
our
big,
3 oldest buildings.
I think one of the things that, as before I was in this seat, is that the public forgets is how many buildings, how many square footage we have, and how many dollars of assets we maintain. Because when you start throwing out the numbers that we're throwing out, that seems very large. But then when you're talking about a major rebuild of a historical elementary school, and then you throw in everything else and every other building we have and every square foot, it all of a sudden becomes, because most people are compartmentalized in their district and they only think about their school, 1 or 2 around them. Even looking at the map, it's like crazy every time I look at it. So I think that's going to be part of how many, when we use in the campaign, is how many buildings we maintain. And we've had that in our packet too, how many square feet it's
2.1 million,
yeah. So there you go.
400 million in assets, 23 buildings.
So I think when you start saying that, it suddenly all of a sudden says, okay, well, I get it now.
Yeah, I mean, just, you know, I even hits me even every day still. I had said today in our cabinet that there's something I learn new every day. And just think of the utilities for that much square footage, right? That's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you just think of lights that are on and, you know, if they're inefficient, like how much money is that we could save? You know, and I mean, that's a lot of lights. So, you know, that's the piece here that you did on. I mean, you know, I think we would all agree that the things that Christine said were not included in priority 3. I mean, not any of those were, you know, items that weren't worthy.
They're not luxurious items.
Right, you know, from that standpoint. So, you know, but definitely a lot of buildings and a lot of square footage.
I think it's going to be really important from an informational standpoint to differentiate between programming for the public, between programming and capital structures, buildings.
That's always a very big
I think it's
confusion.
going to be a big one.
Yeah,
We can show some good pictures.
yeah.
But I think it's more of like the way that it's really designed is that there's 2 separate. It is by law separated, that you have one pot that the public can fund for the facilities, and the operational comes from the state through the state. But so I think it's like you said, like I think a lot of people are like, why wouldn't you spend this here and there? It's like the rules are very unknown.
But back to Trustee Raymond's suggestion, I think it's always a great idea for us to continuously communicate to our community. So putting out these key priority areas and reminding the public too about the survey results, and you can see that alignment along with a couple of figures, if, you know, for framing it, the context. And then, you know, remind the public too that if they have questions, concerns, they can email us. I don't know if your bond email is still open, that email address that was used for the survey, you know, so, I mean, if you're willing to still take that on, you know.
Yeah, the survey is great too, like, we were listening,
Yeah.
Mhm.
here you go,
Mhm.
right?
Right, data-driven, yep, community input.
And in your process, in your timeline, you have that time and space coming up to make those decisions. So you've done your due diligence through your process of really gathering everything and looking at everything, and all the considerations you're making now will come up here as you make those decisions for that informational campaign.
I do like having the initial discussion though, because obviously, you know, especially with OMA laws, like we don't know how we're feeling until we can have this. So this is a nice starter, and then when we're talking to the public, they can see where the initial thoughts are as well. So yeah, it does complicate things with the renewal too, because I typically like things to go in November where they're just like right in the front, so everyone knows. But it's going to be a problem with this one.
I mean, one thing that is nice about the August though is you're getting close to the start of school, and people are in buildings saying things, back to school nights, those kind of elements. So, you know, to you have a lot of people around the excitement of starting school. So I do think that is a positive with that time frame.
Isn't Michigan talking about moving up the primary, or is that
Yeah, but that's a
further
primary,
down?
so that goes all the way into March. You're saying.
Okay,
The
okay.
Democratic primary and the Republican one will stay the
So
same.
August would be,
The general primary, not the presidential.
gotcha, okay. Would that be early enough, or late enough in the month, though, for people to be back in the buildings?
It would be the second Tuesday
It's
of
early.
August, so you're right around that time that we're seeing people back in buildings.
Not like school year.
Not for school, but
Right.
like, you know.
Orientation.
Orientation and
Yep.
stuff like that, exactly. Sports are starting up, bands starting up, a lot of that.
And so in January, February timeframe, are you gonna come to us with proposed ballot language?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep,
We would
we'll
actually-
have,
go ahead.
since I feel like we're getting consensus, I'll, have the attorney review it. And he'll propose something that I'll bring, to the board to approve.
My daughter suggested more soundproofing everywhere, because teenagers are loud.
That was on
Like,
the- that
how's
was
school
on your
going,
list.
honey?
That was on our list.
I know, she's in ninth grade.
The right
It's
side
helping
of
in
the-
Just started.
cafeterias. We've been starting to do it in cafeterias, some hallways, so it's helping.
I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
John, question for you to ask if it would be appropriate to talk about that open enrollment before we get to the point of making those decisions, just having a conversation at a board level of some buildings that we've talked about, just so we can have a better understanding of what it would look like left the same and what it would look like if we changed.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, your capacity at this point is pretty much where you're at. I mean, you know, you might see, you know, so for instance, like, let's take Eastern Elementary, if you were to, you know, take less, you know, open enrollment students, you know, would that take that building down a little bit? But, you know, it would probably, at this point, I would say, keep you from having a lot of classroom additions. I think there's still some thoughts about a library, you know, space that's there, so I don't know that it completely takes that out of the equation. But I definitely think the idea of, okay, 4 classrooms need to be added on, I think that, you know, that at least you do that, and then I think you say, okay, we can definitely wait and see that. You know, I think that's what this does, is allows you that wait and see versus if we don't, we know where we're kind of at with that. And so I think that, you know, that's the conversation I'm having right now with some other district superintendents around the state. I've had the chance to talk to 2, when you see in curriculum committee, are like districts. I've had the chance so far to talk to Farmington and Portage. I can tell you Portage does not have any open enrollment at all across the district, the elementary to elementary. Farmington is wide open just like us. So, you know, looking at that and that element of, you know, the hard part of that is, like I say, is your strategic plan has an item in there of increasing enrollment. If you're going to do that, it definitely could affect that, you know, from that standpoint. And so you just have to be understanding you're going against one goal to do what now, which is okay, you know, but like I said, it all has a kind of a chain reaction in those elements possibly. But I would say if the board didn't do anything, you definitely are probably thinking at the forefront when the bond, you know, is passed, that you're probably gonna have to address those buildings, you know, sooner than later for sure. If you make a policy decision that would limit that, I think it definitely buys you some more time to see where things go as far as just natural movements, like all your other buildings in that aspect.
I don't think we have
I
to
think-
figure it out before the bond. I mean,
No.
No.
And
it's good
I-
conversations to have.
I would just add, they're really tight, but remember, we have special programming in there. So Eastern, we have 3 preschools. So there's ways we can internally address it without having to make that policy decision before that gets to be a crux to where we have to make a decision. So I think you've got some time.
So the board would have to give us some direction that that's the route we're gonna go. I think we've always tried to say, we're always gonna provide preschool at every building that we can, you know? And so there's multiple policy decisions that could be made there. And like I say, that I think could impact that. I would say, if we feel that's the right route to go, let's have that in that discussion, and then you see later on how that's not made an effect. And you may go, that was the right decision, or reverse that decision, or massage that decision. But, you know, I do think there are some aspects, you know, at every building, every elementary, we know there's some things. And it's just a matter of where these classrooms kind of go. You know, like I said, it's a bit of a chess game right now.
It was a really weird
with-
shift during COVID
Yeah,
too. Like,
and Ken, again, with the building things that are going on, I just don't know what to think right now about the whole Lafreniere East Bay Township, and even Blair's starting to get interesting with the construction. That's just this week that's been
Oh, yeah.
announced, right? So, you know, to say what's gonna be 4 years down the road, I mean, I don't know.
and we've got other neighboring school districts that are switching stuff up too. So like that's causing shifts. Like there's I think a lot of variation right now.
Well, I think, you know, do I think you're gonna have to do something? The board will in the future, absolutely. And to have some funds to do it are pretty vital. Which one it is, a little bit of wait and see still. But yet I can tell you, at every building, you know, that we have listed in here, there's something, you know.
And still having the foresight to look at too, like some things we've talked about, tag on each side of town,
Right.
or
Right.
thinking through. some
And I
of those
think you've
things.
got to get through central grade. You know, central grade, I've always said, is almost this linchpin to so many things of what that design is in the end, the size, all those things.
What programming
When we
is
get
housed there.
that, it clears so much up. You know, you get a beautiful brand new building downtown, how many people are going to want to, you know, do you have to look at limiting school, you know, open enrollment from that standpoint? Very possible. I mean, you know, and so, you know, like I said, there's so much that happens if you do that, that just causes a chain reaction across the district. It's gonna be so interesting.
And it's also if you can get the teachers. Because, you know, we saw a classroom today with, how many kids?
59.
59 kids in
But it was a very large room.
it. It was a large room,
Very
but it's
large,
59
almost.
kids.
But that's purposeful. You have multiple teachers.
Yeah.
It's the way the
There were-
program's
there were-
designed.
Yeah.
Was that at West?
No, that was
That's
the central,
central.
it
Central.
was the STEM, yeah. That's purposeful.
But both of them had that kind of
Yeah, and it's,
feeling.
and it's
in
designed that way,
Mhm.
purposefully.
But that's still a lot. It is.
For that program, that's what's designed for.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that the good news is you have probably at least 2 classrooms per elementary that our additional program we provide that gives you the flexibility of maybe not having to make a hard decision until we flush some of this out.
So,
So given the work you've done tonight and meeting your outcomes of consensus on priority 3 and the performance management and those undefined items, just one more time, is there anything that you all might need to do between now and January 16th other than process and integrate all the information and come ready to do these things? That's the next meeting in terms of the pre-bond planning purpose, so. Is there anything else that you might need as you move forward?
One I'd like to put on the table that I've already mentioned, I do want to make sure the train program is clear to you all. So I do anticipate
That's
next
coming.
month, hopefully,
Yes.
bringing you a presentation from Train on what exactly that looks like and entails. I think that's still a bit of a missing component here that, you know, there's a few ways that could go that I want you all to understand, but I really need you to be able to see clearly that entire, what they would be proposing before we can do that.
Will that go through finance first?
It would,
Okay.
it would.
Thank you.
We'll know more tomorrow. We have our meeting. We're hoping to see probably the first time we've seen the raw numbers.
I mean, based on some of our aging infrastructure, I can imagine it must be a pretty beneficial.
That's our thought, but like I said, but we need to see
Yeah.
and what those all look like and what the savings and, you know, but like I said, they comb every tunnel and every element and light and so it's gonna be really interesting for us to see what it does.
So you'll have that added later of data that you'll have to make those decisions, and then you'll be ready in January to start thinking about that informational campaign. So, right? All right, I think that's probably the end of this part of the agenda item.
Made it too easy on us. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for all the work that's gone into it so far. Okay. Any other questions on bond planning for right now? Then we'll move on to.
Sorry, can I,
Yeah?
did you want to do a communication?
Of,
Any kind of press release or communication about?
yeah, I have had the chance to, you know, talk with Miller Davis and I do have something prepared. I'd like to, you know, just touch with Scott. And again, it's just pretty much the conversations we've had tonight, just to, you know, put out in the media and our community, let them know that we're meeting and essentially that these things where we landed and just want to make sure everybody's good with that. Ginger and I are gonna meet after here and put it all together with any thoughts that
Like
came here.
with
so.
your 2 key slides? Are you thinking about that, the bullets? Like-
Not quite. It'll be more of a based on the things here on that element.
Well, we can add this to our website. We've added everything else to the bond page so far, and this has probably already been emailed to you, so you have access to it as well.
And I do know I see the record eagle on the back too, so. well.
He says he sees you.
Thanks for making it easy.
And thanks for doing all your tasks that we asked you to do,
Yeah.
so.
I'm not sure I did one completely as you had asked, but I struggled, so.
Hey, at least you admit it and own it, and that's all good.
You know, the key thing I just want to say, a lot of things here that do great things for our kids and again, keeps our kids safe, warm and dry and really, you know, expands opportunities for programming to be, you know, better and just really being very thoughtful deeply in every dollar that we're looking at spending of our precious community resource. So can continue to work at these and just appreciate all your time on it.
Well, thanks everyone for what I think is a pretty balance with the low millage rate that you maintained. Even though it is the large number, it's a great rate. All right. So with that, moving on to public comment number 2. Is there any public comment?
No request.
All right. With that, thanks again, everyone, for adding another board meeting. We will have our next board meeting, regular board meeting on Monday, November 13th at 6 p.m. in this room. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second. I think that was Andrew, but we'll go with Andrew there. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Meeting adjourned.